Morning, everybody. So in 1966, 32 million people turned their televisions on to watch the World Cup final, to watch England beat Germany. If you look at the top 10 most viewed programs of all time, you'll see a smattering of royal weddings, the funeral, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, the Apollo moon landings. If you look down to the 20s or so, you'll even see James Bond films from the 1980s where 20 million people tuned in. That's probably not a surprise. What's maybe more surprising is that just a few years ago, almost as many people tuned in to watch the Euros final between England and Italy. The difference being, though, that about a third of them didn't watch it on television sets. So about 20 million people watched it on TV, and about 10 million people watched it on other devices. So my name is Peter Grant, and I'm the head of media effectiveness at Boots UK. And I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes or so just helping you to understand how we navigate this increasingly fragmented landscape. A little bit about Boots to begin with. You probably have all heard of Boots. Boots has been around for, 175 years. We've not been measuring stuff for 175 years in the way that we are doing, but we've been here for 175 years. We've got about 2,000 or so shops. The business is split between retail and pharmacy. It's about an £8 or £9 billion business. We have an optician's business, and we have a hearing care business, and we have the number 7 brand and a number of other global brands. And we're having a really good time. You may have read all kinds of things in the press, but for 13 quarters in a row now, we've delivered growth, year-on-year growth. We're doing well against the competition as well. For 13 quarters in a row, we've gained market share. So things are looking pretty good. Now, when I was asked to give a presentation at MadFest, I of course said yes, because I love all of this. It's one of the highlights in the calendar for me. You meet loads of interesting people, you make friends here, hopefully for life. You have some incredible conversations. It's formal and informal at the same time. There's loads of energy, there's a real buzz about the place, and I think I've chosen a really good slot. So I love it. I then asked what the topic was going to be, and I was told it was, will the acceleration of CTV and its attention potential signal the demise of linear TV? And I thought, shit, I don't know a lot about that. I need to go and find out a bit, but I've already committed to that slot. So I started doing the research, and I thought, well, first of all, I'll find out if I really understand what CTV means. And you do get different answers. It's one of the problems I think we have with our industry, that we call the same thing different things. I asked the kids what they thought of it, and they said, no idea what you're talking about. All TVs are connected out there. They've all got cables and stuff in the back, so they're all the same, aren't they? And we've got a Skybox, and we watch Netflix on it, and we watch BBC One and iPlayer and all of that. And so why is any of that important? It's important because it's not important to people that are consuming it. It's important to us. It's an industry question. So that's the first thing that I think you need to bear in mind. So once I'd done that, I said to the kids, well, what's your view of CTV? And they hate it. When I talk to them about their experience of Netflix or of Amazon Prime in particular. I mean, when I was a kid and you were watching adverts on television, you used to, if any of you are old enough to remember, you used to get that little thing in the top corner, and it was a warning that the commercial break was about to start. So you prepared yourself. It was a trigger warning. You don't get that now. And Amazon Prime is just the absolute worst. I mean, it's just absolute shit. I mean, you're watching TV and the drama is building. At least with terrestrial TV, it used to reach a peak and then you go, oh, there's an advert. But they don't do that with Amazon Prime. It's like, oh, we need an advert, and it's in the moment of crescendo and it closes down. It's bloody awful. I think it's the worst. Actually, there's one thing that is worse in terms of an advertising placement than that. And Mike, I think you need to pay attention to this one. All of you guys in the room, you'll probably recognize this. What the hell are A5 adverts in men's toilets about? What is that about? I mean, you go to the toilet, and straight away you're confronted with, do you go in the middle, or do you go on the left, or do you go on the right? You've got that. And then you stand there, and you have this A5, and it's usually erectile dysfunction, or a car, or a holiday, or something like that. And you're standing there doing what you're doing, and somebody's next to you, and you pay a lot of attention to that A5 advert, Mike. Mike, are you paying attention? You read every single line in that, and then you notice that there's another one next to you, another one, and it's not the same as yours, and your curiosity starts to take over. But you know you can't look. You don't look to your left or to your right when you're in a urinal, so you have your head up, and you have to sort of look across without making sure that you're not seen to be looking anywhere else. And you see the other guy maybe looking across at yours, and you don't know where to look. Bloody awful. But I'm not sure that you're measuring the attention that those things get, Mike, because if you do, I'm sure that would be through the roof. But attention, that's what advertising is all about, isn't it? It's all about disrupting the journey. And it's attention to deliver profitable growth, always to deliver profitable growth. But it presents some choices, because you don't have an infinite amount of money. You need to make some choices to where you're going to place your investment across all of those channels. And if you'll just indulge me for a moment, I'm going to read a passage to you. So this was this short story is attributed to a guy called Francis Bacon, who was a philosopher and a scientist from centuries ago. He was an early multitasker. And I love this, so just let me read this. In the year of our Lord, 1432, there arose a grievous quarrel among the brethren over the number of teeth in the mouth of a horse. For 13 days the disputation raged without ceasing. All the ancient books and chronicles were fetched out, and wonderful and ponderous erudition, such as never been heard before in the region, was made manifest. At the beginning of the 14th day, a youthful friar of goodly bearing asked his learned superiors if he might be permitted to add a word, and straightway, to the wonderment of the disputants, whose deep wisdom he saw vexed, he beseeched them to unbend in a manner coarse and unheard of, and to look in the open mouth of the horse to find the answer to the questionings. At this, their dignity being grievously hurt, they waxed exceeding wrath, and joining in a mighty uproar, they flew upon him and smote him, hip and thigh, and cast him out forthwith. For they said, surely Satan hath tempted this bold neophyte to declare unholy and unheard of ways of finding truth, contrary to all the teachings of the fathers. I love that story. I love it for lots of reasons. And I think the bit that I love most is that bit right at the end, contrary to the teachings of the fathers, because the theme of this conference is being bold, and you have to be a bit of a contrarian if you're going to be bold. You have to take some risks. You can't just listen to what your forefathers might say. So when I joined Boots 6 years ago, one of the first things I was asked to do was to look at the marketing KPIs, count the KPIs. So I pulled in all the dashboards and all the Excel spreadsheets and all of that mess. And I got to 125 KPIs. And I stopped then. I said, I don't want any more. And I thought to myself, well, I've got a friend who's a pilot, and he flies planes, and he doesn't have 125 things on his dashboard. And he can fly that plane and land that plane blindfolded, because the only thing that is in there is what matters. But we in marketing had 125 KPIs. Now, they can't all have been key performance indicators. It's unlikely that they were even performance indicators. Probably not even indicators, but nevertheless, that's where they were. But it presents a problem of itself, doesn't it? What do you measure? What do you choose to measure in a world where you're inundated with potential? Only last week, Alex, my friend down here in the front, he convened a meeting with 3 or 4 of us at a conference in across the other side of town, and he titled the chat remember, the McNamara fallacy. So the McNamara fallacy, I had to look that up. I had to Google that, and basically what the McNamara fallacy says, it's named after a guy who I think he was the defense secretary during the Vietnam War in the United States. And he single-mindedly believed that by counting bodies, counting deaths, they could determine whether they were winning the war or not. And what that speaks to is the folly, if you like, of measuring those things which are readily available. And we all we all have that temptation. What it also says is that you will ignore all other things because you can measure something that is really simple. So what do we do at Boots? How do we navigate this? Well, It's sometimes also said that attention is a moral act. And that sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? How can attention be a moral act? Well, if you think about it, and if you think about the injunction from the Bible, the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not covet thy neighbour's house, wife, ox, goats, in that order, I think. What that's saying, of course, is that don't fall prey to envy, but it's also saying be very, very careful what you pay attention to. Because what you pay attention to, you start valuing. And what you start valuing, if you value it enough, you elevate it above everything else. So choosing what you measure and how you measure your media effectiveness, it's a really important thing to do. So how do we do it? How have we done it? Well, we're a commercial operation. Most of us work in commercial operations. We get paid for what we do, or we pay people to do things that we want them to do. So it's about money. So for me, it's always been really, really simple. It's about long-term, short-term, or medium profit return on investment. So how do Boots go about doing this? Well, we've built what is commonly known now as a framework. And we've got two principles here at play. The first is that there is this hierarchy of values. So right at the top, we have profit return on investment. That's what everybody is aiming at. And then we have, so that's the superordinate metric, if you like. And then subordinate to that, we have a number of others. And we've spent a long time trying to figure out what those subordinate metrics are. The superordinate one is there to stay. If you speak to anybody outside of marketing, certainly your CFO or the CEO, all they will be bothered about is how much money that you're making. So if you haven't got some commercial measure right at the top of your hierarchy of values, then you probably won't have a great relationship with your CFO, and you probably won't have the money that you want in order to do the advertising that you want to do. So that's the first principle. The second principle that we have is to make sure that you're not only measuring it in one way. So we have right at the top of the tree ubiquity and market mix modeling. And recently we've introduced a company called Measured, because there are some people still, even though market mix modeling is now having its time in the sun again, there are still plenty of people that would say, yeah, but it's just a model, isn't it? Well, yeah, it is a model. And they go, well, you know, it's not going to be perfect, so how do you know that that's right? And you go, well, it doesn't need to be perfect, because all we need to do is to move forward. The objective here is to move forward. The objective isn't to be perfect. The objective is to move forward, to create forward momentum. You know, you could stand waiting for the perfect day for the whole of your life, for the sea to settle down and the wind to subdue, and you'd never go anywhere. Or you can set off and see what happens. And if you're equipped with the right sort of stuff and the right team in place, then you can have an adventure. Nevertheless, what we do with Measured, we've just onboarded them in the last 2 years or so. They specialize in geo testing. So what we do with them is that we're effectively triangulating the results that they get from the Facebook tests and the Google tests and the YouTube tests that we do. We've carved the country up, and we say, right, okay, what happens when we go dark in certain parts of the country? And we can run 4 tests concurrently now. So we can do this at scale. And what we're doing now, we're building integration between ubiquity and Measured, so that we can exchange move the priors around, and increase the strength of the model. That bit's working really well. You'll also see that there are 3 key questions that we ask once we've got that superordinate set of measures in place. Is the media reaching our audience efficiently? Is it being noticed? And is it creating the intended response? And they're very consciously placed in that order. You'll notice that we have Lumen in here. Mike obviously is the CEO of Lumen. Attention is where it's at, is where a lot of it's at these days. And we've been working with Lumen now for about a year or so. And really excitingly, in the last week or so, we've just onboarded Creative X. I'm excited to hear Sorin talk shortly about how they're melding together Creative X and their partners Realize in this space. So I'll be attending that talk in an hour or so. So that's how we go about doing it. And most of these have only come into the business in the last year or so. System 1 and Mesh have been with us for maybe a couple of years or so. So then you might say, well, you know, that's all well and good, but how do you actually get to something like this? Somebody asked me if I'd have a picture of a rat in this year's MadFest talk, and so here it is. About 2 years ago, we decided that we wanted to get to something like on the previous slide, but we didn't really know how to do it. And like many of us, you'll take calls from agencies making claims about how they can measure effectiveness within your business. So I started returning those calls. And we did a little bit of a deal, and we said, right, okay, you can have all the data that we have, that's what I said to them, but you give us a free proof of concept, and then you get a chance to demonstrate to us what you're saying you can do. So Christmas before last, all of these suppliers and some others got our data, and then we got them together in a room about 6 months later, about a year ago now. And the reason I've got play on there is because that's so important if you're going to get stuff done. You think about how important play is to kids, and you think about how you structure play with kids such that it works, such that they learn and develop. And we embraced that principle really for what we did with all the suppliers. We said, look, here are the rules of the game. This is the aim of the game. Let's approach this in a way that you're not bothered about whether you win or lose. Let's just embrace it and see what happens. And it was so important, and it worked so well. And we do that now all the time. So embracing play, I think, is really, really important. The second part of it, and this is the bit probably that I'm most excited about now, having got to a place where you've got loads of data coming in, and we've got a CRM database with, I think, 16 million customers. So we're not short of data. But it's the integration of that data. It's the liberation of that data. I think I'm going to become a data activist. Data needs to be freed. In order for data to be leveraged and to realize commercial value, you need to integrate it with other data sets. So that's super important to us, and we're doing some great things now with all of the partners that you saw on the previous page. We're compelling them to share the data. And then the final bit there is around focus. You know, in this world that is increasingly fractured and fragmented and parsed up, it's never been more important to really know what matters most. I was chatting to somebody a week or so ago, and they said amongst young people in particular, there's almost a collapse of context, and unless we can tether young people in particular, I think, to the purpose of organisations, then it's going to become increasingly difficult for them to feel like they belong in these increasingly big, disparate organisations. I think you're getting closer because I'm running out of time. So I've got a picture of a naked man now. It just gets better. So what's going on here? So once you've got all of that lot in place and you're trying to create your masterpiece, the masterpiece on the right, not the masterpiece on the left, not the masterpiece on the right, you have the tooling in place to give you a chance to do that. What you see on your right is a statue of David, Michelangelo's masterpiece. He was assigned the task of creating that masterpiece when he was 22 years old, and he had no idea how he was going to do it, but he took it on, and he was asked why he felt so confident that he could do it, and he said simply, the masterpiece is already in the block of stone. All I have to do is throw the stone away that we don't need. And he spent the next 5 years just throwing stone away. And that's very much the approach that I take to media effectiveness. It's really difficult to understand exactly what brilliant looks like, but we can all spot shit when we see it. And we can all chip that away and throw it away. And by definition, if you throw that away and put that money somewhere else, then you're going to end up with something better. And if you do that enough times, you get closer and closer and closer to your masterpiece. It was Alain Prost, the French Formula One racing driver, who after millions of laps and 4 world titles, he was asked what his ambition is. Surely you've achieved everything. What's your ambition? And he said, my ambition is to drive the perfect lap. Just one perfect lap. That's all I want to do. And having that ideal, I think, is really important. It shouldn't be paralyzing. It's something that you should aim at. And that's my ambition. My ambition is to design, execute, and evaluate the perfect campaign. Probably never do it, but it's something that we'll be aiming for. How much time do I have left? 0. Okay, right. Okay. We're doing loads of great work with all of these guys. Lumen, we're working with hand in glove. On a weekly basis, we're having weekly stand-ups with Essence MediaCom. We're looking at the attention metrics by platform, by campaign. We're comparing that to the platform metrics, and we're making choices about the extent to which we should optimize. Samba TV, we've worked with them for a year or so now. I don't know if you've heard of these guys, but they help us to measure not only reach and frequency of our TV campaigns, but really excitingly, what they can also do is tell you to the extent to which people actually visit your website. And so linear TV, believe it or not, generates a very active response for us on .com. Another reason why you wouldn't want to dispense with linear TV. And so finally, I'll close now just by saying, well, first of all, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to my stories. There's loads to go at. I'd like to speak to any of you in the room who know much about influencers. But what I would say is that even though I haven't provided you with an answer whether CTV is dying or not, that's for you to decide. Hopefully that you've seen how you might go about approaching that and similar sorts of questions. And if you've got any questions for me now or afterwards, then please feel free to come and find me. Thank you.